Hi, everyone. It's Alec Crawford, host of the AI Risk Reward podcast. And our very special guest today is Steven Zeller, international entrepreneur and impact technology investor. Welcome, Steven.
Thank you for having me on, Alec. It's great to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your background and early career. You've done so much in so many different fields. But where did it all start?
Sure, of course. I feel like I need a couch for this conversation, but yeah, just taking a quick trip down memory lane. Started my entrepreneurship journey as a teenager. I was working in Kansas City, Missouri, and just started doing some side gigs, and then kind of grew it from there. Had some early success, early failures. Went through a fun, tumultuous early days of entrepreneurship, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners have ex- can relate to that to at least some extent. So maybe my first million very early, and then a year later was dead broke. Went through that type of roller coaster because then, of course, you have no idea how to manage the funds coming in. So when I first got started, Alec, it wasn't really following a passion. It wasn't really following my dreams, or I didn't really know what I was passionate about other than I knew that I was interested in biology, anatomy of the human brain, things like that. But I was sitting there at a crossroads at one point in my early stages of life saying to myself, okay, do I go down the 14 years of med school to become a neurosurgeon, which I would enjoy, or do I take a bet on myself and go the entrepreneurial route? I chose the latter. And luckily for me, now I'm at a stage in my life where I get to marry the two together, but from an entrepreneurial perspective. So my journey has led me through a lot of ups, a lot of downs, some success, some failures. And now I get to focus on um, investing in innovative technology that's really going to propel humanity forward into a prosperous future. So that is really what excites me, that I have landed on my passion, and that is innovative technology for sure. But the road to get here was definitely interesting to say the least.
Was there a particular moment that triggered that idea? Like you woke up one day
Hmm.
and said, "Wow, future technology and humankind."
Sure, I can't pinpoint an exact specific catalyst, Alec, but if I was going to um, pick one, there was a point in my life where you get to a point where, in my early days as an entrepreneur, it was all about self-serving money, just chasing success for the sake of success. And I didn't really know what was at the end of that road. And to be honest, there is no end to that road if that is what your goal is, because there's always more, there's always bigger, there's always better. So for me, I would say the catalyst that really made me transition to the road and the path that I'm on now was when I was sitting there taking stock of my life after making millions of dollars, saying, there is no end to this path. And if I were to die tomorrow, what was my impact? What was my legacy? What did I do? Is the world better off because I was here? And the answer, to be completely honest, was no. So that was kind of a aha moment. So if I was going to pinpoint a specific catalyst on what really changed my focus on life, it was that right there. It's okay. So now that I've achieved this level of success, what am I going to do with it, and how am I actually going to be impactful and have a meaningful existence? So it, I'm so intrigued with technologies, and hopefully we'll get into some of them today. But the various technologies and development, we're seeing such a dramatic, rapid shift in human capabilities and what we're able to achieve collectively. And it's going to be an incredible next decade, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
That's so amazing. Was there a mentor or a coach at some point that helped you, or
Not specifically. So I never really hired or sought after a specific mentorship or coach per se. A lot of it was this is going to be fun, but my first actual coach was an AI. So welcome to ChatGPT. So now you have a PhD level uh, coach in a pocket, so to speak, where I started having these incredible conversations and really thought provoking um, rabbit holes, for lack of a better word. So that was kind of fun. So if I was going to say that I had a specific coach, it would actually be a non-human version, which might be a
Yeah,
good
that's
segue into what we're getting into. um, but no, along the way, did I have some amazing friends and colleagues that I really leaned on for advice when, hey, this isn't working, what I'm doing, what are your thoughts? Absolutely. I wouldn't call them a mentor or a coach, but yes, there was definitely a lot of help along the way for sure.
yeah. Can you think of a time in your career when you took a pretty big risk and friends and family were like, "Steven, you're crazy. Why are you doing that?" But you were eventually were proven to be right?
Sure, adversity is part of the game when you are going the entrepreneurship route, right? I never really had a huge support system. Never had financial backing. I came from a very large family growing up in the Midwest. They did the best that they could. I kind of shifted away from the family uh, environment as an early teen, mainly because I didn't necessarily conform to their religious ideology. But without going down that rabbit hole, there just wasn't a lot of support system. So I never really had a significant amount of people, and they never really understood me. I always was the odd man out. I was always thinking differently. I never really conformed. So I was always chasing something else, something bigger. And I always knew there was something bigger out there. So because of that, there was always a little bit of a divide between me and my social surroundings growing up, at least. And then obviously once you start cultivating your own relationships, those change over time as well. So I would say, not from a family perspective, obviously they never necessarily were antagonistic or gave me specific adversity on any of my ideas. They just didn't understand it. So for the most part,
Yeah.
they never asked. I was ironically, I was living with I had one of my siblings, one of my five siblings, living with me for a time, and he never even knew that I was what I was doing. Had no idea what I was doing from, and I never really spoke finances or making money. What I was doing business wise, he never asked. So that's kind of how it was growing up. So I never really had a familial or close relationship adversity saying, hey, you shouldn't do this. It was later when, like in my early 20s, when I had developed relationships, and a lot of them were very successful individuals because I sought to surround myself with people who had what I wanted and then just kind of gleaned tidbits of information, both positive and negative, and then I sort of differentiated the two and determined which ones were actually going to be beneficial to accomplish my goals. But it was one specific individual that I can remember that was like a family member to me. I had gained a very close relationship, but this was after a couple failed business attempts. They weren't nothing big, but he kept prodding and saying, "Hey, this your second, third business? Like, what is this? What are we doing?" And then I brought a really good concept that actually ended up being very successful. And he immediately shot it down and said, "This is never going to work. What you should maybe think about going back to school, like you had talked about, and going to, that's the surgeon route." I'm glad I didn't take that advice. I would never take that advice because I always bet on myself. But that specific venture ended up. It started out in Arizona. It was a ancillary service connection company, kind of a consolidated service for the escrow process for homeowners. That scaled nationwide within 18 months and did very well. So glad that I didn't take that negative advice.
Yeah. Look, the best businesses are ones or ideas are the ones where everybody tells you you're crazy because that means no one else is doing it. Right? So
Very well said. Very well said.
So tell us a little bit about what you're using AI for
Mm.
today and some of the kind of the rewards you're getting from that.
As I said, I use it on a daily basis. So I will wake up every morning with a thought in my head, and I want to talk about it. I want to get it off my chest, and I want to go down the rabbit hole. Now, usually this is along the lines of something uh, space-related propulsion systems. Like I have a okay. I really don't know how the engineering ramifications would be for this theoretical propulsion system. So I can talk about that. The like if we were going to create a Alcubierre drive with existing technology, how would that go about? What are the holes? So I'm actually having these conversations, bouncing it off of ChatGPT, Llama, Grok, and sometimes it's fun to actually do side by side comparisons to see what different large language models will kick back to you. But having these conversations on a daily basis, especially around genetics, thought provoking topics around the potential for cellular reprogramming and rolling back the biological clocks. Best, like the one this morning was, um, what's, in your opinion, what is the best method that we can use, and how can we implement AI to really pick up biomarkers with light passing through atmospheres in, we're talking about hundreds, dozens, hundreds, or thousands of light years away, but we can observe light from the star system actually passing through the atmosphere, and how can we best perceive the biomarkers or potential biomarkers and chemical reactions that are happening on that planet passing through the atmosphere. So that was my conversation this morning, and AI is literally like having, I know that a lot of people will say it's not at the PhD level yet, it's more like a associate's degree, but it's very intriguing the amount of information that you can glean when you have these conversations.
Yeah, super cool. And as an international entrepreneur, is there a particular project that you can share with us?
Sure. So I'm in the process of building out data centers right now, and a unique project. So what I'm doing specifically is looking for advantageous mutual relationships that are beneficial for local governments. So I'll work with a government that has a government-funded university, right? And I'll actually offer to bring in the financial backing to create a state-of-the-art data center built on campus in exchange for a strategic energy deal, right? Because energy is obviously one of the biggest inhibiting factors to profitability. I shouldn't say inhibiting, because obviously if you have an AI data center right now, the supply and demand is in your favor, and you're going to be not hard pressed to find clients for it. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm working with governments like over in the UAE, working on a project there. Can't talk about everything until the deal is actually done, of course, and ready to break ground. But yeah, that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Super cool. Well, that's going to be hot. Both pieces, building the data centers and getting the energy. And some parts of the world still care about how sustainable is the energy too, which is
Right.
super interesting. And then, as an impact technology investor, just tell us a little bit about how the environment's shifted over the last couple of years. I mean, I feel like we're going through
Mm,
the upslope of hype, and now maybe a little bit of the downslope of
yeah.
disillusionment, and maybe we're coming back up. I'm not sure.
Yes. Are we specifically talking about the adoption or potential ramifications for AI, or the
Sure.
tech industry overall?
Yeah, let's focus on AI because that's what the show's about.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I asked. We want to make sure that it's relevant for the listeners. So, from an AI perspective, I think that we're still in the hype phase. To be completely honest, now the trajectory obviously isn't as steep an upwards trend as it was maybe a year ago. Obviously, some of the interest, when one of the biggest reasons that interest is dying down is because of the lack of real world applications, right? So I think we're going to see a dramatic increase again. So we might see a little plateau, which is where we're at. But this is from public interest. So there's two different sides to this coin. One is the actual development that's happening. That has not slowed. The development side is still pumping and grinding. Now the news cycles, there's only so many times they can say the same thing until something big happens, and then it's going to be frontline news. And the news cycle is what the public cares about, right? Is when something big happens, public interest spikes. So the development has not slowed. If anything, it's only intensified. Now, it is relatively isolated. The vast majority of funding rounds are going towards the big guys, but then there's a lot of offshoots as well. So what we're seeing right now is executives from OpenAI and Anthropic that are breaking off and starting their own ventures and doing these major funding rounds for their own projects with, unique features and characteristics or paths of doing it, right? So we're focusing on security angle. We're focusing on how big can we go. We want to take a quantum leap instead of just focusing on the traditional large language models of these big guys. So that's what you're seeing a lot of right now. But I think the next big public interest spike is going to happen within the next 1 to 2 years when you start seeing real world implications and applications of when AI begins to be embodied by robotics. And not just robotics, when it's implemented into BCI too, but we're about at least 5 to 10 years out from that becoming, commercially viable solutions as well, as far as computer interfaces. But I think robotics is going to happen first, and we're going to see it happen very, very quickly. When that happens, like you already see all these pilot programs from BMW is doing one. I believe Mercedes is doing one. Now, these are all isolated into like manufacturing, like assembly line type of tasks, right? So very repetitious, not really requiring reasoning skills or capabilities at this point. So, but it's very intriguing that it's already starting to integrate into the workforce. So once it gets to the point where these general purpose robotics, which can be mass produced very, very rapidly. Like look at what's happening with Tesla plants. Now imagine that same type of production going into robotics. They'll be able to pump them out and reduce the cost to $20,000, $30,000 a head. And a lot of manufacturing facilities and general purpose, general labor jobs are going to be looking at least adding that to their workforce. So that is going to be something that gains a lot of chatter and a lot of public interest. So as far as your question, I know that was a roundabout way of answering it, but as far as your question of on an international scale, is the interest dying down? I think from a PR perspective, it is. The advancement from the funding going into the development and the actual development itself, that has not slowed.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, we talked about, robotics, that's coming. And I think, it's not that obvious, but large language models are kind of helping with that to some degree. And you mentioned potential things around jobs, but what do you think the most pressing ethical issue concerning AI will be over the next few years?
Definitely security, for sure. And geopolitical stability, because obviously it's going to be a fight. Governments are fighting for top position, right? And if you have the most powerful AI theoretically, how do you combat the from a DoD standpoint, right? How do you combat another government's ability to crack your pre-existing code? So how do you stay a step ahead of it? There's going to already a crap ton of cyber attacks. I was talking to a
Oh, yeah.
buddy today that like their medical hospitality business was literally just hacked this morning, and he's going through that. So cyber security is going to be an ongoing fight. We have that now. It's just going to be accelerated and take a different, slightly more aggressive form now that you have these governments and other players, private players that have access to a very, very advanced level of compute power.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So thinking a little bit more about the future of AI and humanity, at the start of the show, we started talking about a few pieces of technology. You can go where you want to go there. Quantum computing, brain machine interfaces, just
Well, don't give me autonomy because we'll be
yeah,
here all day.
pick one.
Hmm. To me, I think if you're asking what's going to have the biggest implications for humanity, there are so many. I do think that it's necessary for us to become a multiplanetary species. So obviously, we have to develop the propulsion capability and that's just one aspect of it, right? I'm not going to go down that path. I think I'm going to pick genetics because I believe that if I'm going to pick one technology, especially where AI can come in and play a major role, I think that what we're seeing right now in genetics is has the biggest implications for the future of humanity. Basically, because we are, for the first time in human history, able to not just decipher and understand your entire genome and what goes into it, but the molecular engineering that's going into, or molecular machinery that's working intracell, right? And the ability to now, for the first time, with precision, go in and make edits, make adjustments to where I believe this. I actually want to get your thought on this, Alec. Just for a little bit of dialogue, I don't know if you feel the same way as I do. I believe that gene editing is something that is not only going to be necessary, but from a health perspective, I think we are going to get to a point, obviously, once we have the precision and we know that with a fact, we can make these without adverse side effects, right? These edits. I think if you are a parent and you're looking at your child, I believe that it's going to get to a point where it's unethical not to make sure that editing goes through for your child because you want that child to be as healthy as possible for the future, set them up. So in other words, if you have a child that's born with a hereditary potential to develop breast cancer because he has a specific gene and we can flip that gene off, take away. So you're born with a 50% chance of developing this cancer. We can remove that predisposition. I believe it's going to be unethical as a parent in the near future to not go through that process to give your child the best possibility of a healthy life. So I'd like to kick it to you and get your
super
perspective.
interesting. Yeah, I think there's huge ethical questions about that because
Yeah,
we don't jump to a point where everyone in the world can afford that on the same day, right?
true.
So another example of that would be, look, if we could roll back our biological clocks, awesome, but that also is going to lead to significant societal and ethical issues, right? Like, oh, we thought we're only going to have, 5 trillion people on the planet. Now it looks more like 10, right? And who gets to do it first, right? All that kind of stuff. And in some countries,
Good point.
like here, like best guess is that's going to be based on money. At the start, it's going to be
Of
super
course.
expensive. Only some people are going to afford it. What about other countries? I don't know. Is it a lottery in
Sure.
France? Like, who knows, right? So I think it's gonna be fascinating. I do agree with you that is something that's going to start happening, and I think the issues around that is always unintended consequences, right? And the
Of course.
classic is the zombie movie where they think they've cured cancer and gave everybody a whole bunch of stuff. Hey,
The
no one
T
has cancer
cells, the
anymore, and
T
then
virus.
right, and then a year later, people start turning into zombies, right? So you just don't know.
Makes
And you've
for a
got to.
good movie.
It's a great movie. Point is that we do have to be careful.
Sure.
I mean, once you change someone's genome, obviously they're also going to be passing that along too, right? So,
Yes.
um,
Which, if it's healthy, is a good thing. We
right,
already do that. Now it's just a matter of, like you said, doing it in a cautious way, where we should be accelerating, because natural selection does that already, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to, generation after generation, advance the cellular, not just biodiversity, but the cellular immunoresponse, right? So we get better generation by generation because this generation goes through it. Now they developed this epigenetic resistance to these types of viruses. And they pass that down. So now the generation below them is stronger, right? The subsequent generation. And to your point about the disparity problem, I agree with that, and it's definitely going to be an issue. It has to be, because obviously there's an expense that comes along with this type of technology. But my argument, and give me your thoughts on this after, is that already happens, right?
Yeah.
So it already
Yeah.
exists, because guess what? If you roll out a new technology, any technology, who gets it first? It's
Right.
always so. The poorest country has the least access to the healthcare that a wealthy country has. And then within the wealthy country, the poorest have less access to the top of the line medical care that you do. So if you have two people in the United States, right, one works three jobs, single parent, and just barely getting by, and then you have somebody who has done very well for themselves, is a hedge fund manager, and has millions to deploy. And then they develop the exact same disease. Which one do you think is going to have access to the
Yeah.
healthcare that could save their lives?
Yeah.
So I believe that the argument is real, but it already exists. And I don't think that that should be a necessarily limiting factor to where we don't continue to develop the technology that could be good for everybody,
Yeah.
with the knowledge that, yes, inevitably it's going to be in the hands of the wealthy first, and then there's going to be a trickle down effect. Obviously, the goal is to get it to where it's affordable for everyone. And I think that as demand increases, and then uh, just like with everything that you can think of technologically wise, I can't think of very, very many things, including rockets, by the way. I can't think of very many things that once you have a proven, like the genome sequencing itself, right, Alec? The first one took couple $1 billion and 10 years to actually sequence the first genome, but then the next one, a few million, and then the next one after that, we're talking about 1 million. And now you can do it. You could go sequence your entire genome today for a couple grand. It's going to get to the point where it's literally $100, and you can just walk in, walk out, and your entire genome is sequenced. And that is part of what a doctor looks at when he's making very specific recommendations based on your actual genetic composition. So, that would be my take on it, is that we should still develop it cautiously, to your point, but I don't think that we should limit our ability to advance for the sake of disparity.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the other example of that was when a couple years ago when the MIT professors and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, we should put AI on hold for 6 months." I'm like,
Right.
"The Chinese aren't putting it on hold." No.
Well said.
Right?
Well said.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
like,
we did.
yeah, no. If you push pause, it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So, wouldn't it be more ethical for you to be holding the keys?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So look, you've been a founder, you're an investor. Do you have any specific advice for founders? Let's think broadly and
Sure.
with technology founders as opposed to specifically in AI.
My advice would be, it always go on the side of innovation. You have to think 10 years ahead, more so than ever, because at the rate of progression with technology right now, if you're thinking about starting a business, a general business, right, not even in the technology sector, if you're just thinking about being an entrepreneur, you really have to look 5 to 10 years ahead and say, for example, is this service, is this product, is this going to become obsolete with all of the developing technology that's going to be out there? There's going to be a lot of significant changes to how things get done. Automation features, robotics are going to take over a lot of mundane tasks, right? So if you're right now thinking about starting a business, what you need to be thinking about is where the world's going in the next 5 to 10 years with the current acceleration of technology, and how can I become a part of that and help accelerate it? Because if you're not, if you're shooting from what's working right now and
Yeah.
you're trying to replicate something because it's working right now, you're going to miss the target. So
Yeah.
that would be my biggest advice, not just in tech, definitely in tech, because that's where the biggest change is happening the fastest, but across all aspects of the business world, things are happening very fast in fintech, things are happening very fast in, the day-to-day jobs. So I think you have to start really planning on what's going to become obsolete and how can I be a part of the next round of innovation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Look, you're traveling around the world doing business and technology, obviously, and I'm sure you're being exposed to certain world leaders. Do you have any advice for them around AI, whether it's regulating AI and
They wouldn't listen,
technology
but
or yeah,
um, my advice: take it with a grain of salt, because obviously the world leaders are, for the most part, doing a good job. Obviously, I'm not going to point out any specific individuals that are not, because that would be rude. But uh, collaboration would be my advice. Look, we as a species can eradicate ourselves and face extinction events from so many different ways. We're talking about the potential to get wiped out by an asteroid, just like the dinosaurs did so long ago. There's um, fighting over resources on a tiny planet, fighting over power on a tiny planet, fighting over space dominance around a tiny planet. I think is thinking very small. I get it, I understand it, but it's kind of caveman mentality. So I think it would be collaboration would be the one thing that I would say. The world leaders really need to realize that, hey, as a species, we need to tap into our collective uh, human ingenuity and really start thinking about how do we extend and advance human civilization into a prosperous future and stop squabbling, trying to fight over resources or try to stay one step ahead of each other to become a global power.
yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, thanks for that advice. And we're going to transition to our next segment, which is a lightning round where I
Yay.
mention things and you tell me if you think they're underrated or overrated, and then briefly why. So let's kick that off with quantum computing,
Hmm.
underrated or overrated.
Underrated. The reason it's underrated is because of not where we're at. It's still in its infancy, and obviously we have major issues with scalability right now. But the reason I say underrated is because of the implications when we get it to scalability. Because what it's going to be able to unlock and achieve for humanity is absolutely astronomical.
Artificial meat, underrated or overrated?
Um, I'm going to say overrated. Not because I think it's a necessarily bad concept. I think there's actually a lot of amazing things, genetically enhanced meat and agriculture as well, I think are fantastic. But I think that we shouldn't be thinking about the scarcity of resources and focusing on um, lab grown meats and things like that. So I'm saying overrated because I personally don't think we have a resource problem. A lot of people will disagree with that. That's the only reason I say it's overrated from my view.
Brain computer interfaces, overrated or underrated?
Underrated. Incredible what we're going to be able to accomplish if we can achieve symbiotic harmony with AI itself. I think I'm not going to go into this because we would need another interview segment to dive into this one, but the ramifications, a lot of people are thinking very small-mindedly, unfortunately, about, okay, this is going to be great for gaming, this is going to be great
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you know applications like that, which is fine. But what we're already at the point with BCI at its infancy right now. We're able to make paraplegics walk. That is incredible. That feat is insane that we can bypass limiting, inhibiting factors neurologically and go directly into um, tap directly into the muscles and tell it to do a specific action, and it will, because everything is controlled by your brain. So the ability to not just control movement, regain functionality from destroyed tendons or limbs or neurons, that is incredible just from a medical application, but commercially even more so, because we will be able to do incredible things. I'm not even ruling out telekinesis. It's going to be incredible what we're able to achieve once we actually tap into the full potential of BCI.
Colonizing the moon, permanent moon base, overrated or underrated?
Underrated, because I think there's a lot. It's getting a lot of negative press around it. Like, why are we going to the moon? Why people don't really necessarily understand the whole reason to go up there. It's not to bounce around and look stupid. There's a legitimate reason to, and that's our first step. We don't need to go to the moon for harvesting resources, though helium-3 obviously has huge potential if we're going to harvest helium-3, which is abundant there because obviously there's no atmosphere to screen it, and we can't find it here. But deuterium to deuterium is really all we can do on Earth for fusion power. So if we were going to look for fusion power, we do need to mine helium-3, because that is the helium-3 to deuterium is a much more efficient fusion-based molecule. But the reason it's primarily necessary is it needs to be a stopping point. We need a way to go. I don't want to say a gas station, but if we're going to colonize the solar system and beyond, there needs to be a hub that's outside of the Earth's environment, because the Earth creates drag. The Earth is very difficult. It takes a lot of power to escape our gravitational pull. So getting up there is very difficult when it's bound to Earth, when it's coming from Earth. So that is going to be a launch pad for a lot of interstellar missions.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. How about telemedicine, underrated or overrated?
Medicine overall underrated. Telemedicine, I think, potentially overrated. I may not be as versed in this field as I'd like to be, so maybe this will be my conversation with AI tomorrow to go down that rabbit hole. That'll be a fun conversation. I'll let you know how it goes. The reason I would say overrated is I think you see these companies popping up all over the place. They're everywhere. I think, and there's a high demand for it just because of ease of use and accessibility. So I like it. I definitely like it. I think right now, though, there's more hype than efficacy, because telemedicine misses the ability as of now to I'm going to say efficiently diagnose. There's a lot of things that you can do with telemedicine, but they're not going to be as effective as walking into a doctor or walking into a clinic, even with AI. Now, AI implementation may render this personal perspective wrong, but as of now, I think it's overhyped.
Got it. Smart homes, underrated or overrated?
Define smart homes. Like,
Uh,
are we talking about a
everything's controlled, from your phone, from locking your front door to the alarm to turning on TV to your window blinds to
overrated? That's so. I mean, everyone should have that capability, but it's so. Look, if you can't get up to turn on and off your lights, uh, something is really messed up. Like you need help. Uh, but no, it's great. I love smart homes. I have a smart home. It's fantastic. I do think it's overrated just because it's great to have, but it's not really something that makes a dramatic difference in your life.
yeah. Augmented reality, underrated or
Ooh,
overrated?
overrated as it is right now, underrated as to where it is going to go. It definitely is making leaps and bounds, and it's getting better and better every iteration. Every company that's popping up with something new. It's definitely with. I think right now it's more hype than it is functionality, to be completely honest. But I see where it's going. So 5 years from now, I would say underrated because I see the trajectory and the ramifications of how amazing it will be once we get it right.
All right. And finally, the movie series Alien, etc. Alien, Aliens, Alien Romulus, Alien versus Predator, just in general, like the Alien series, underrated or
Yeah.
overrated?
I'm gonna say overrated. Wasn't really super impressed with it. I like the concept of it. But if we're talking about the actual series, the acting, all of that fun stuff, yeah, definitely overrated. Stick to Star Wars, guys.
Yeah. Sorry, Sigourney. Anyway, this has been Steven Zeller. Steven, thank you for coming on the show. International entrepreneur and impact technology investor. Is there any way people get a hold of you? Is there a website you want to point people towards?
No website. The easiest way to get in communication with me is on LinkedIn. So that's if you have a pitch deck or an idea, or just want to shoot the breeze about genetics or any of the topics that we discussed here or beyond, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Have a great rest of your year.